Product managers, welcome to this comprehensive Jira tutorial that is going to make your life as a product manager much easier once you're finished with this tutorial. So, the first things first, when you're actually creating the project, you're possibly going to be using Kanban and Scrum. I assume that you're already familiar with both of these methodologies. So for this video, I'm going to be using Kanban. And I also assume that you're familiar with epics, stories, bugs, tasks, and the subtasks. Workflows will come to this later. Now, first things first, when it comes to the project themselves, most of the time you want to be using the company managed projects. First of all, you have more options for customizations. Second of all, you're probably going to be working with more than one board. So, company managed project is something that is to go for you. So, you always want to use the company managed project. So I'm going to name this product management. The key is going to be PM as well. Share settings with an existing project. For you as a project manager, that's not really too much relevant. I'm just gonna continue so I can show you how the work will look for you. So this is the Kanban board itself. You already know how it works and how it actually works in Jira. So first of all, creating the issues themselves, it's really easy. You click on this blue button, which is the create. And from here, this really depends on what you want to create in here. So since you're going to be working with the features mostly, your to-go thing is to actually create an epic itself. For the summary, for example, we're gonna say sign up flow. For the epics, well, basically epics themselves don't really have the parents because they are number one when it comes to the hierarchy itself. So they're always at the top. Components. This is really useful for you to have. So when it comes to the components themselves, in order to group some of the issues under one, let's say, under one topic, let's say you have some issues that are related with the API themselves. So first of all, you need to create a component itself. So you click on components and you click here where it says compass components. We're not interested in that. We're gonna toggle this off. We're gonna skip. We're gonna click on create the components. I'm gonna say here backend, and you also have the person who is going to be a component lead. This is not really relevant. More relevant is this option right here that says default assignee. So this really depends on how you're actually setting up your project to work. Do you have some engineering managers, some tech leads, or something like that? That need to actually for the issues to be handled to them first, then they're discussing with the developers like what kind of options do we have in there. So it could be the component lead itself, it could be project default, project lead, and the unassigned. In here I'm going to say that basically this is unassigned. I'm going to go with the front end. I'm going to select this to be unassigned as well. I'm going to go here and I'm going to say UX UI, for example. I'm going to click unassigned 3 components. That is more than enough. So this status right here, This is something that is created by default when it comes to the Kanban projects. So these statuses in here, 100% you're going to be transitioning between these statuses until job gets done. And basically, when you're doing something like this, I'm going to show you. Let me just create the epic. All right, so let's say UX UI redesign of sign up page. All right, so I can select in component. I have it in here. There is also the description in here. I'm not going to be filling this out. So as soon as you already know this, so fixed versions, basically this is useful when you're doing the releases themselves. So fixed versions and releases, keep in mind that those two things are basically the same. So what are the fixed versions? So for example, version 1.0, version 2.0, version 3.0, alpha, beta, open beta, however you actually want to call it. Those are the things that are being created and being put in here. So I'm going to be doing that later. Priorities. So this is something that you and your development team will actually be working on to determine what is the priority here. Of course, depending on that, you will be working on the issues from top to the bottom. And you also know that as well. So you have the priority when it comes to the team. Well, you can actually use this. So you can create your own teams and basically add your team. But the thing is, people from that team are not going to be like assigned. You cannot assign a group, you cannot assign a team to an issue or something like that. That doesn't work. It goes individually. You also have options for the labels. When it comes to the labels themselves, difference between the components and labels is components are project based, labels are globally based. That's the thing. You also have the option to select the start date. This is optional, doesn't have to be in here. You also have the option to attach some of the files. Due date, yeah, this is probably something that you're going to be using a lot. So you can set that as well. And let me just create this. So it appears in this, it appears at this board right here. And now I can move this around. So this actually means that when it's transitioning, you're going to move these cards in here from column to column. And as you can see, that is how it works. So when it comes to done, as you can see, this part right here gets stricken through. So that means the issue has been set to be done. Now what happens is when I click on this issue itself, it says that basically this is done, and also I have this resolution field that has been set as well, which is also being defined as done. So those are the things that matter. All right. Okay, so let us take a better look at this issue right here. So you have the description and everything else. So you have this details page in here, and there are like a lot of fields in here that probably you're not even needing them. So question is, how do you get rid of that? I would recommend for product managers to actually be the project administrators. That is like different, because you shouldn't be focused on that. You should be like focused on like creating the tickets for developers, bringing a value of the product itself, and doing the stakeholder management and everything else that is related to the product. So yeah. Okay. What also matters in here, when you actually go to the project settings, you have this option to go for the name for the project key. URL, not really important. project type. This is recommended for this to be software project because probably you're going to be working in a software project category. Not really, because you're going to be added to the project that you're going to be working on, so everything is going to be set up for you. You don't really have to worry about that at all. All right, so this thing that I was mentioning about these fields in here, how they are actually presented, they're presented like within the issue layout. So, in order to actually do this, that I'm doing right now to change the layout and everything, either you need to have the edit issue layout permission, that's one thing, and or to actually be the project administrator itself. So for example, development that can be actually useful. So it really depends on how your team works. So I can remove this part. I can remove labels. There's also an option where it says hide when empty. So these are some of the things, like for example, team, for example, priority, for example, parent, and stuff like that. So the things that you already saw within the tickets themselves. So I can go ahead, I can save this, and when I go back to my project in here, when I go back to my issue, as you can see, it's much better now, and it's more easier to understand. You also have the options for more fields in here, such as story points. So this is something that you can use as well, because either you're going to be working with the original estimate or the story points or some other estimation techniques. But in terms of reports, Jira recognizes either story points or either the original estimates. If you're actually doing stuff like t-shirt estimations or things like that, this is something that Jira doesn't recognize. So no reports are going to be shown in there. That's another thing. What else matters for you is basically you also have this option for the timeline itself. Within the timeline itself, what it's important to say here is by default, within the Jira itself, for the timelines, you can only see epics. In order to actually see other issue types in here, you actually need to change your hierarchy, which is not the thing that I recommend. Why? Because when you change the hierarchy, it will be applied on the whole Jira instance. And if it's applied on the whole Jira instance, chaos emerges. Because probably you're going to be there and there are going to be other projects as well. The thing that I find interesting in here is this kind of a list view in here that you can basically add. And these are some of the fields in here. If you actually don't want this, you can hide this field, for example. You can add more of the fields in here if this is something that you want. And you can also create your own issues from the list view as well. What else is important? The another thing that is important in here are the pages. So what I can actually do, since you're writing a lot of the PRDs and product managers are known for delivering the PRDs, and we all know why this is actually being done. Of course, maybe you're working in a company that doesn't go with the PRDs, they're only doing the prototypes, and that's it. So this is the thing that I can do is, first of all, you can connect a project to your Confluence in here. And for example, let's say I have some marketing stuff, and yeah, and I have some things in here where it says welcome to the marketing team, and some pages in here. What you can do is you can link those where it says Confluence content, and you can click on here and you can say you can actually say marketing, and you can actually search no recently visited pages. Okay, whatever. Marketing, filter by space, search pages. Yeah, you can search for the pages. What was named this, for example, and that will be also linked to this specific issue as well. So that is something that is important for you to know. Other things that might be of importance is the customization of the board itself. But as the product manager, I don't believe that you need to be knowledgeable about this because this is more board administration and everything like that. But if they don't have a Jira admin, well, maybe some of the work will be actually added to your own back. The thing that I wanted to show you here is this completed work items on the Kanban board. So this is for the Kanban board exclusively. So when the issues are actually hanging in the done column, for some time you can actually select after which time period those cards will be removed from that column. That this doesn't mean that they're removed from the project, they're just removed from column. That's it. Speaking of columns in here, so each column is tied with the status itself. So these are actually the statuses, and each column is tied with their statuses. The way how you can actually define the statuses themselves is within the workflows. Yeah, and with the workflows themselves, you can actually add some of the new statuses. You can add some of the transitions and the other things. But this is something that you can actually ask your Jira admins to do this kind of work. Yeah, another thing that I have in here is when you're actually adding the child issues within the epic itself. So you can actually go in here and you can say create child work item. When you're actually doing within the story itself, you can now write user stories as a user. I want to, so that I blah blah blah, and you're doing all of that stuff in here. So when you're creating it, it will be shown in here, and also within the board itself it will be shown in here. Now you're probably wondering why it was actually separated from here, because there is something in Jira that there is called the swim lanes, and basically within the swim lanes themselves, by default there is a swim lane called expedite, and when the priority is critical, it will move the issue in a separate track, if I can say it like that, because you know how the swim lanes actually look like. So if I change it in here to the medium, it goes back in here. Of course, how you're actually assigning the issues in here, you can just type in the person and you can just add them in here. Of course, you're adding the comments right here. You can actually add some of the people in here, and when you actually add them, they are being mentioned within this comment in here, and they will get the notification. That's the thing you need to worry about. The another thing is the creation of, let's say, of new boards. So how the boards are being created. When we click on this search box in here, and when we go to this option where it says go to all, or it says boards, we're redirected to this page right here. Probably you're not going to be seeing all of the boards in here. You probably are going to be seeing only the boards that are related to your project. So there's this option to create a board. You can choose between either a Kanban or a Scrum board. So let's say I want to create some Scrum board from here. but with sample data it will create a new project. Now there are free options in here, so I can create a board from an existing project. I can say Scrum Dev, and for the project you need to start typing in, I'm saying product management, and also needs to stay as product management. And there we go. The new board is actually being created now. And yeah, since the board has been really created here, this is basically what we can see. So now you have two boards. You can navigate between those two boards. Yeah, if you actually don't see one of the boards in there, that is probably because boards themselves are based on the filters themselves. And filters, okay, and the board is actually the visual representation of the filters themselves. So the filter was actually changed for this board into something else. So again, when we go to the board and we actually see this query right here, if that query was changed with something else, probably some of the users would actually lose the access to that board, which is not an ideal thing to do. Of course, when it comes to Scrum, you know that you have the backlog, you also have the active sprints as well. You also select, so you have this option where it says create a sprint. And when there is option to create a sprint, there you go. And then here, there's this option to add the dates. And I cannot start it because I don't have anything in here, but I can drag and drop it. When I go start the sprint, I can give the name, and in here it says it doesn't have the value for the estimate field. So Jira is programmed in that kind of way. If you actually don't do any kind of estimations, it will warn you about those kind of things. So that is also important for you to know. Reports, I mean, more or less to actually know about them. Scrum has more reports than the Kanban itself. You get the options for burn down charts, for epic reports, for velocity charts, for cumulative flow charts, and all of the other lovely reports that are actually there. So this is something if your clients are actually requiring you to have. But basically, these are, if I can say, the most essential things for you to know. Oh, yeah, one more thing. To get rid of this clutter right here, so what you can do is you can click on three dots, click on remove. Let's say I don't need calendar, and I don't need, let's say, archived work items. I don't need, let's say, for example, shortcuts, releases, code. Let's say I don't need releases as well. List, not really helpful to me. And this is something that I can be left with. And this is something that I can be focused on. So I can move the tab, and if I want my tab to become on board first, I can actually have it. Yeah, basically, mostly this is how the things work. When it comes to the Jira itself, Jira is not a complicated tool. It's just a matter of how Jira gets customized. Yeah, that is it about for today's video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. See ya. Bye.